On this video, we're going to be talking about 4 pieces of cover or structure that you need to be fishing during the spawn. All right, everybody, so we're out here on Lake Chickamauga. It's a beautiful day. It's a little bit cooler than I wish it was. I was hoping for like the mid-70s or something like that. Flip-flop and shorts weather. That's what I'm looking forward to, but we'll get that pretty soon here. But nonetheless, it is a really nice day today, and I'm catching fish shallow, which is awesome. You know, these fish are, even though the water is higher than it normally is this time of year for Chickamauga, usually it's not this high until like, you know, May, and I'm sure that they'll drop the water, you know, and everything will change. But you know, these fish are up and kind of like in their spawning, you know, phase right now. They're maybe not like locked on the beds yet, but they're looking for those areas. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about the types of cover that I really like to gravitate towards during the spawn time period, because that's what the bass like to gravitate towards. You know, you're looking for areas where the bass are, if they're not spawning right now, they're eventually going to spawn, and you can kind of deconstruct the area and catch both pre-spawn and post-spawn fish, even if they're not on the bed. So let's go ahead and get started. The first type of cover that I love to fish, and this is probably the best type of cover you can fish during the spring if you've got this type of cover, is docks. Docks are perhaps one of the best types of cover for the spawn time period, all 3 phases of the spawn. You can catch pre-spawn fish on docks, especially on like the ends of the docks and things like that, around floats and things like that. They're going to stage at the ends of the docks, and then they'll spawn at the walkway side of the docks, you know, closer to the shoreline, especially if you've got dock posts on that walkway. There's some walkways that are just planks, you know, they're just walkways, and then you've got cables that anchor it, the whole dock to the shoreline. Those aren't as good because the fish really like to spawn around the dock posts. So if you got like a couple sets of dock posts, those are great for bass to spawn on. They really gravitate towards something like that, or some of the other cover that we're going to talk about, because it allows them to build a bed around that type of cover, so they can kind of put their backs to it. They don't have to protect 360 degrees of their bed. They're just kind of focused on what's in front of them because they kind of got that thing to their back. But dock posts are really, really good during the spring. So usually I'll start on the outside of the dock, you know, when they're in more pre-spawn, or I'm looking for a bigger pre-spawn female bite, and then I'll, you know, once they start locking on the beds, that's when I'll start fishing, you know, the walkways, the first couple sets of dock posts, and then after they spawn, you can do the same thing. You can kind of go back towards the ends of the docks, fish for fry garters, or, you know, big pre-spawn females that are kind of, you know, recuperating from the stressful spawn process, all that stuff. So docks are just one of the best for all 3 phases of the spawn. There's not a lot of cover that you can find fish in all 3 phases of the spawn on that type of cover. And some baits that you really want to consider throwing: wacky rig stick bait is by far one of the best baits that you can throw around docks. You can skip it underneath docks, you can fish it at the ends, you can fish it underneath the walkways where they're spawning. It's just a really, really good presentation. And you can also fish some reaction baits too, like a swim jig or a chatterbait. Especially when the fish are in, you know, the docks are maybe a little bit dirtier water, dingier water, maybe there's a little bit of wind, and also when they're at the ends of the docks, those type of baits are going to work really well. And then flipping and pitching. Like, I love flipping and pitching a creature bait like the Z-Man palmetto bugs this time of year, which, by the way, all these products that I'm mentioning are going to be in the description below, so you can check those out for each of the types of cover that I like to fish this time of year. But anyways, flipping and pitching a creature bait can be really good around those dock posts. You know, especially if you're catching really big fish and you're fishing dingier water, sometimes you want to like upgrade, you know, go up to like 22-pound tests and just get in after those big girls and be able to pull them out. So yeah, overall, docks are money. They're the juice during the springtime. I love fishing docks. Another type of cover, which you can see behind me here, is reeds, whether they're flat cattail style reeds or they are like round bulrushes or tule style reeds. Reeds are one of the best types of vegetated cover for spawning fish. They really get attracted to these areas. Number one, because, you know, the reeds generally grow in those protected kind of bays and coves where the bass are going to spawn anyways, but they also create this nice hard wall. Okay, again, a bass really likes to create a bed against something so they can just protect what's in front of them, as opposed to having to do circles and chase bluegills and shiners and all that stuff off of the bed, you know, without any protection. So reeds are really good, and the great thing about reeds is, you can see here, you got all these little points and pockets. Well, the fish are going to be spawning in those little pockets generally. And so throwing like a creature bait, like flipping that creature bait that we just talked about, the palmetto bugs, or like some type of a creature bait like a gremlin or something like that, all those are going to work really, really good. I love it. If I've got reeds, dirty water, and it's like 2 foot deep around the reeds, I mean, that is just absolute money during the spring, especially when they're spawning. But again, you can also throw the swim jig around if you feel like they're just kind of off of the reeds and just kind of meandering around. You can do a lot of different things. If it's real dirty water, the chatterbait will work again. You can throw a poppin' frog. A poppin' frog, when that bites on, is pretty killer. There's a lot of things you can do around the reeds, but reeds in general, you know, depending on where they're at, if it's in a protected bay or cove, can be absolute dynamite during the spring. So you've got to focus on areas with those. The next type of cover that I love this time of year is stumps. Again, same principle. Fish want to spawn against something that they can help them protect their bed, their eggs, and stumps are a great type of cover. And they're also a really good pre-spawn cover. So like, you may have an area that has a lot of stumps. The shallower stumps are going to have the fish on the beds, and then you might have the deeper stumps that have some pre-spawn females. One of the things that I've found is, it's kind of my theory, is that big pre-spawn females that are full of eggs really like to hang around hard objects like stumps. I think they really like wood cover for a multitude of reasons, but I really honestly think that they like to rub against those stumps to loosen up the eggs, and before they move up to spawn. I feel like, just from observing them, that's something they do, because a lot of times you'll see a big female rubbing against you know, a stump or a piece of wood or something like that. And so I think that the females not only use it for shelter and just something to relate to, but also for that purpose of loosening up the eggs to go up and spawn. But again, that's just my theory. I don't know if it's actually true or not. But what I do know is true, that bass love stumps, whether they're in the pre-spawn mode, not as much in the post-spawn that I've found. They do get on it occasionally, but it's not as much of a sure thing. But pre-spawn and during the spawn, stumps are really hard to beat. If you got an area that has a lot of stumps, there's going to be a lot of bass spawning and staging around those stumps. So definitely don't pass them up. Chickamauga is a perfect example of that. Stumps are just dynamite here. And as far as fishing stumps, man, there's so many things you could do. You could throw a shallow diving crankbait, a square bill like a Strike King 1.5 if you're trying to get a reaction bite from fish. You can flip and pitch. If you're visually able to see like the shadows of the stumps up shallow, I would throw a wacky rig. Wacky rig is a great way to catch them. And so there's a lot of different things you can do to catch fish around the stumps during the spring, but just fish the stumps. That's all I got to say. They are great. The final type of cover that I really like to you know, dial in on is going to be laydowns. So, and what I mean by laydowns, I'm not just talking about a tree that fell over into the water necessarily and has just stayed there, you know, just on a bank. It could be just a blown in piece of wood or something like that. wood in general, whether it's a piece of wood that blew in there with some heavy current and some flood conditions, or it's a tree that just fell from the bank into the water and has been there, those are also great situations for fish to spawn around and for you to catch fish around those types of cover. I would also add bushes kind of to that same category. Flooded bushes are going to be in that same kind of scenario where you've got just those real broad, bushy, you know, objects in the water that the fish like to hang around. And for laydowns, blow-ins, and brush, one of the best baits that you can throw, of course, is a wacky rig. There's a common theme here. Wacky rigs just killer during the spring. But also to fish a floating worm, something that's like bubble gum or methylate, a color like this, even white. All those real bright colored floating worm baits out there, those can work really, really well around brush, laydowns, and blow-ins like that. But there's a narrow window. You know, if you're not getting bit with it, you know, you're going to know really quick whether or not the fish want it at that particular time, because it's only generally you only get like a week or two window to really catch them on the floating worm during the spring. It's like right before they really get locked on beds that they eat that very good. But floating worms can be good. Swim jig, again, can be really good. And then flipping and pitching if you've got dirtier water. So anyways, guys, those are just some thoughts on some of the best cover. And if you see this cover out on the lake when the water temps are in the low 60s, mid 60s, and you got nice sunny conditions, you definitely need to give it a shot. These are some of the best places to catch bass during the spring. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments or questions, drop a comment below. I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.